Welcome to the final bell. We are back again, and great to be back. It's the new to the final bell. We are doing it via Zoom, so there's a little bit of visual stuff here as well as some audio, and it's great to be back. As I said, we are keen to keep bringing this podcast to you, the listeners, the Geelong supporters, the Geelong members, to keep you updated on everything that's going on with the footy club, keep you informed, and hopefully entertained as well. Hopefully we bring a little bit of gold. Every week we're going to have a couple of guests, a current player, a current coach. We've got Zach Tuohy coming up a little bit later on. I know he's normally a panel member of this podcast, but he's going to be our guest first up. We're also going to try and get some past players on each week to reminisce a little bit. While there's no new footy going on, it's a chance for us to talk all things old footy. We're going to look back at history. Stokes and I are going to be allowed to brag and tell everyone how good our careers were. I've mentioned Stokesy, but before I get to you, Stokesy, just hold on 2 seconds. Scotty Gullan is with us again from the Herald Sun. Scotty, good to see you and hear from you.
Yes, Cameron, a few technical hitches. I'm not the best, but we're away and running. You look very comfortable in your vehicle.
Well, just for the those people who are listening and not watching, I'm in my recording studio, also known as my car. It's the only way I can escape my children and the chaos and the noise that goes with that. So I'm bringing you everything from the comfort of my car. Mathew Stokes is with us, as well as our wonderful sponsors again for this year's podcast. Panther Tyers have come on board this year and have very kindly stuck with us. Despite the interruption in the season, Panther Tyers are going to support us throughout the year. So a big thanks to the guys there. They're in Lara. If you need tyres, go and check them out, ring them up. I know there's not a lot of driving going on at the moment because not a lot of people are leaving their house. But when you need new tyres, go and chat to the guys at Panther Tyers. And we have our very own Panther Tyres model. For those who are watching this, Mathew Stokes is decked out in all the gear. Stokesy, you look magnificent.
Thanks, Cameron. Obviously, you can see with the Panther Tyers in the background here.
That is impressive.
Looking very
It's great
good.
to have them on board, though, isn't it?
It's great to have a local company on board to support us in these tough times. Actually, absolutely, Cameron. And they're still working out there, working away in these tough times. And they actually offered all our listeners a 10% discount and a pick-up and drop-off delivery service at the moment. So if you're at home and you've got nothing else to do and your car needs a service, they're the guys to call.
Fantastic. So huge thanks. Please support our sponsor, Panther Tyers, because they are supporting us so well. And the support right across the AFL industry has been outstanding. And I know certainly the Geelong Footy Club has been really appreciative of their members, their sponsors, the supporters who've been so great throughout this time. I think I heard they sold 35 memberships on Tuesday this week. Now, the game's been called off, and who knows when it's going to be starting up again. 35 memberships were sold on Tuesday. So a big thanks to all those people. It is Shutdown. The AFL, I didn't think I'd ever see the date, has been postponed officially, Scotty, till May 31st at the very earliest. But I think all of us are feeling it might be a little bit longer than that. Let's talk about what it means for the Geelong Cats. We know the players have had to scatter and head for the hills and can't have contact at the footy club. What are you hearing? What's happening around the AFL world, first of all, Scotty? What's everyone doing? How are they coping?
I think they're all going a bit mad, obviously, like most of us. And there's a lot of WhatsApp groups, a lot of Zoom happening. Initially they were training okay, but then when the government said you'd only train with one person, that threw a spanner in the works a bit. I've spoken to a couple of them. They're trying to get a routine like we all are and figure out a way to, because, as we know, they've done 6 months of hard work, so they've got to stay up, stay active. It's. I think mentally is going to be the biggest battle, to be honest.
And the mental part is huge. And I know as some of the integral staff that clubs have kept on board has been player welfare, and I'm sure staff, people who have been looking after staff welfare. Stokesy, you're best qualified to talk about this. It's shattering seeing people either potentially losing jobs, but at the moment stood down, leave without pay, all of that type of thing. I think 135 staff across the Geelong Footy Club, and there's currently only 35 who are still working, if you like, and most of those from home, of course. How you would have been talking to staff? How is everyone? Is it, it must be one of the most extremely tough times you've ever had at the footy club. How is all the staff at the Cats?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was just took everyone by shock. We were told a few weeks ago that we just needed to take our computers home to maybe test working from home for one day, and then all of a sudden, the next day we got back into work, and everyone got the news that we were going to be working from home indefinitely. And obviously, with the events happening around the world, it just got worse and worse every day. And the reality is that there was no football, so there was no revenue coming through. So we were pretty much told within a week that we're definitely having to take being stood down from the club until the end of May. So yeah, we've been home for 2 weeks already. Still got 2 more months. Like Scotty, going a little bit mad already. Obviously, you can tell with his beard, he's not doing any kind of routine.
Personal hygiene's not number one
exactly
at the minute,
right.
Stokesy.
But it's tough, but it is what it is, and there's worse off people out there, so there's no point complaining. I mean, the players, they're going to be okay, but there's a lot of people around the club, around the industry, and a lot of people around Australia that are going to struggle through this. But we'll support each other like we always do. We're a big family down at Geelong, and we'll get through it.
It's not an integral service, the sport and AFL football. We've seen that. But it is a huge industry that is the livelihood of a lot of people. And, I mean, Scotty, it's a passion, and it's a big part of so many people's lives. It's all a little bit bizarre at the moment that we don't have that thing that brings so many of us together so often.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like you said, the industry's so big, but it's more the fans, what they get in routine like all of us. Saturdays, they look forward to it during the week. I mean, that's taken away. The talk, the footy shows are slowly disappearing. Like we've never experienced this. So you got to find something else to fill the gap. And you can't turn the NBA on and start watching it either. So it's a bizarre time that we're all coming to grips with. I mean, the messaging from the AFL is great. We're going to get this done. If we're playing December, we'll do it. We own Marvel Stadium, so we can play there. So the AFL's been impressive in that, look, we just got to get through it, and then we will play this game. How many weeks the guys might need in the lead up? What do you think? I mean, 2-3 weeks before you can flick the switch again?
The thing it's the injury risk for me that's the way there. So I reckon they're all fit, and correct me if I'm wrong, Stokes. They've all completed a pre-season, so there is a base fitness there. They will maintain it, I'm sure, very well throughout this period. But that high-intensity competitive work, high-intensity sprint work that you need to do with match simulation type stuff with other people, they probably need a month of that before you hit a game. Otherwise, the risk of injury is just too high, and the quality of those early games might be a little bit down. But I'm more thinking about the fact that blokes could start tearing muscles left, right and centre if they haven't had a good enough block, a solid enough block before those first games.
Yeah, I think it's in their CBA agreement that they need a month before they play their first game. So a month full of training to get back to ready to play at a high-end speed. I think you're right, Ling, with the injury issues and concerns, because if they're going to cram this season into, say, 15 weeks, if we're playing games in 5 days' time, they're going to need a fairly solid base to be able to get through that period when it comes to leg muscles, hammies, and calves and quads. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. Hopefully we get through this sooner rather than later, and the boys get back to training, and then, like you said, Scotty, we can actually have some footy and something to talk about.
Scotty, this is all crystal ball stuff, of course, and we can do this at the moment because we've got to keep ourselves entertained somehow, but the possibility. So the season gets going, maybe it's June, maybe it's July. They play it. We could see a grand final on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, whatever it might be. And then the flow-on from that is a month and a half, 2 months off for the players, and then no pre-season next year and just start the season normal. Just chuck your magician's hat on for a little bit and get your crystal ball out. What's the scenario that could happen?
They've said we will finish it this year, and if it is New Year's Eve, we'll make it New Year's Eve. And then the next season, like there's things like the draft. What do you do with the draft? What do you do with trading? That might have to happen while the season's still going. So I think their main focus is we'll get this done. The MCG is going to be used for cricket, so the grand final won't be there. Perth put its hand up, but it'll have cricket issues because the T20 World Cup's here. So there's going to be some issues. There's Spring Carnival, but the AFL, they want to play 17 games, play each other each. Wildcard might get a run. I think only one.
Well, you want
final.
that, Scotty, don't you?
I
You
love
want wildcard.
Wildcard. This is the greatest thing that's ever happened. I think the best of three grand finals stretching it. I'm not in that boat, and I think then the next season, no preseason games, minimal break for the players, maybe 6 weeks, and then into it and try and get it going by April as usual, which I'll probably be able to do.
And I know the AFL has stated it. Will we see 18 teams, Scotty, next year? Will we see 18 teams in 3 or 4 years' time?
Definitely next year. I think the AFL, as you do, you rock up to 2 banks and you get a, what was it, $500 billion load or something.
600 million, was it?
500 billion, Scotty.
I don't know how much it was. I've stopped reading those stories, Stokesy, but it was a lot of money that you and I can't rock up and get. And so I think they're determined for 18 to stay. I mean, there's rumours of North Melbourne going to Tasmania. I mean, Gold Coast and GWS, they've propped them up to this point. Of course, they're going to prop them up for a little while again. But it's clubs like Geelong who rely so much on membership and gate receipts. I mean, the Cats get up to $1 million every home game. That's gone out of the budget. That's why clubs like Geelong are going to get hit the hardest.
And I suppose that is the question. Geelong survives this,
they survive it.
Just to put all of our listeners, I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but to put all of our listeners, the Geelong fans who listen to this podcast, who just are thirsty for information, there is no question whatsoever the Cats get through this. What it looks like after this, who knows, the footy club, but they get through this and are strong enough to have a very bright future.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, I think every club will change the way they do things. I mean, clubs had got, and the AFL, not extravagant, they just ballooned. There was a lot of, there's that famous picture of the Essendon coaches box where there was about 25 people in there. I mean, those days are gone because this is our new life. We have to cut costs to survive and things are going to be shared. But Geelong will survive. It's got its debt under control. The AFL will make sure there's 18. I guarantee you. Gil McLachlan wants 18 teams.
You know what? It's interesting, a lot of the talk about how clubs have just exploded in their football departments. Numbers are huge and everything like that. And agree, that photo of the Essendon coaches box, all on their laptop, everything like that. But I also did a little bit of digging, Scotty.
Yes.
The Geelong coaching staff has only increased by 3 since 2003.
Wow.
So that's 17 years ago, and they've only got 3 more, and that's in development. I think, Sean Griggs come on board and James Rowley's in development, that type of thing.
Mm.
But it's only 3 more coaches than there was in 2003. So not every club has completely blown up its coaching department and had to have these massive numbers.
I think it's more like the computer analyst. The guy, the high performance manager needs an assistant, and then he has another assistant. I think that's where it's sort of around the edges. It seems to have there'd be a lot more people in football departments. I think that's and in executive. I mean, and the AFL in particular, they're going to be slashing people everywhere because the reality is they have to. And you're right, the Cats have been a bit more traditional, so they'll be in a better position going forward.
That's the very serious side of things, and it is extremely serious. We did promise our listeners that we would be entertaining them as well. I did read in your newspaper, Scotty, the Herald Sun, Joel Selwood's given a little bit of an insight on what some of the players are up to. He said that Harry Taylor's become sort of their financial advisor. He's setting us all up on budgets and what we should be doing right now and what we shouldn't be doing. Tom Hawkins runs the Herald Sun quiz at 12 o'clock each day. They log on to Zoom and create a house party. And Josh Jenkins has started a book club. So these players are finding a way to keep themselves entertained. Stokesy, what else are you hearing from inside the walls of this footy club? Just throw some dirt on someone.
Oh, that's completely different to what we would have got up to at this time, Cameron. But I think they're trying to manage to keep themselves occupied as much as they can, so they don't get up to mischief. Like Scotty wrote in his
yes.
Oh yes, what was that?
April Fool's Day
jokes.
Well, I spoke to an anonymous prankster that I can't reveal, sworn to secrecy, that you two gentlemen may know.
It was the ghost.
Well, Stokesy, can you tell me about that story that I put in there?
Oh, look, there was a gang that was set up. Probably my second year, 2007, which was called the Ghosty Group, Ghosty Gang. And what they would do was the night before the day off, they would go around and do pranks on people's cars and houses and dress up as ghosts, and then put photos of it up in the change rooms the next day for everyone to see. And it was amazing. People were trying to figure out who it was. There was people putting bounties on their heads. It was incredible scenes. And to this day, no one knows who Ghosty or who the ghosties were.
Who was most angry with the ghost? Who was putting the bounties on the ghost's head?
Probably Paul Chapman. Paul Chapman probably threatened a few people with the ghosty, but look, it was fun times. It was definitely fun times. Some of them obviously got out of control, like good old young Billy Smets and Josh Caddy, as you wrote in the article.
They put a spanner in the works.
Yes,
probably went a little far, didn't it?
I love the trading post, Stokesy. The ad, going overseas, must sell, ring this number for a car sale. And it was Jackson Thurlow, I think, was one victim. 100 voicemails.
It's
I
going
love
to keep
those.
yourself entertained. And that was while the footy was actually going. So you can't blame these players for keeping themselves entertained. We've got to take a break very, very soon. A couple of questions, though. We do have questions from our listeners, which is fantastic. The fans have been jumping on the website and the Twitter and sending them through already with the podcast relaunching. So please, anyone out there who does have any questions, fire them in. Happy for you to ask about all the old footy. Stokesy and I just a little bit later on are going to talk footy in the good old days, Stokesy. We watched that game the other Friday night, the Geelong St Kilda round 14 game from 2009. We can have a little bit of a brag about that one. Unfortunately, the result didn't go the right way, but we're going to get to Zach Tuohy after the break in a second. But a couple of questions. John from Belmont actually asked similar to what you were just touching on, Stokesy. If it was your team, Ling and Stokesy, in isolation, what would some of the guys be doing? Who would excel in self-isolation?
I think there'd be a few of them. Brad Odden's on his farm with his goats and his horses and his sheep and
he's permanently self-isolated. He doesn't talk to anyone.
That's exactly what he wrote to me. He said he's doing just fine because he doesn't have to speak to anyone or make excuses for not getting out of the house. So that's exactly a quote from Brad Odden's in a text message he sent to me the other day.
I'm glad he replied to your text message.
Well,
you send him one and you think about a week for him to get back to you.
Cameron, I spoke to Tommy Hawkins yesterday, actually, for the newspaper. And he's on the farm, so he's got plenty to do. But I asked him that exact same question. He goes, Mitch Duncan doesn't like getting off his couch, so he'd handle it. But he said young Cam Tahini, he's very concerned about. He said his work on WhatsApp or whatever, he said someone at the club needs to go and find him to make sure he's okay. He doesn't think he's handling isolation very well.
All right, we'll send out if anyone spots him, make sure he's okay. The other one I was thinking, Stokesy, was Joel Corey.
Grumpy himself, yep.
Well, yeah, he didn't really want to talk to too many people, so he'd be fine with that part. But he would have his house set up with a gym. He would have had a Pilates studio in there. He would have come back in better nick than when he'd started the isolation.
Absolutely.
How about Stephen Johnson, gentlemen?
He would have put on 12 or 15 kilos. What do you reckon?
Imagine the supermarket Woolworths. Imagine how much magic they would have sold out of.
He would have been walking into the supermarket, would have seen shelves full of toilet paper, everything like that, would have walked straight past it and just put tub after tub of ice cream into his trolley. Just buying the essentials. Last question, then we better take a break. David from Newcastle asks, and thanks to, we've got interstate listeners, everyone's listening to this all over the world, hopefully. Which teammate would you most want to and not want to be stuck in isolation with? Come on, Stokesy.
I wouldn't like to be stuck in a room with James Kelly.
He'd get on your nerves, wouldn't he?
Get on your nerves, and he's a pest at the best of times. So imagine in isolation, he'd just be a pain in the butt.
Is there anyone you'd be okay with? You'd be quite happy to...
Yep, Shannon Burns, absolutely. The gentleman of all gentlemen, Burnsy. I would happily sit in a room with him for 14 days, just play Xbox. Very considerate guy. Yeah, he'd be one of my favourites to be stuck in. Boris would be a pretty good person to be stuck in a Korean, right?
Entertaining, yeah.
Garlo wouldn't be because he'd get really grumpy after a while.
Quickly.
Very quickly.
No NFL to watch.
No NFL. Yep. Yeah, they're my answers. But how about you, Ling?
Okay. Yeah, no, I wouldn't want to be with any of you, to be perfectly honest. I was happy to get in and train and get away from the lot of you. You'd all drive me crazy. I'd find it hard. I like a bit of alone time as well. So I might battle with that. Good pump up a Burnsy, though. He'd be wrapped with that.
Yes.
It'd have to be someone who would be up for, table tennis, up for just all the little games, like the same movies. No, you'd all annoy the hell out of me, Stokesy. Sorry, mate.
Fair enough.
Don't want to bother you. All right, we better take a break. Zach Tuohy is waiting online. We've got to work out how we're going to bring up his lovely face on our screen here. We're doing this via Zoom. We will take a break. We will be back again in a second, but big thanks again to Panther Tyers. Those of you who are watching this can see on the back there, Stokes, he's got the Panther Tyers gear and the poster out at Lara. They're offering 10% off to our listeners, pickup and delivery, all of that sort of stuff. So please support Panther Tyers. We'll be back in a second. Welcome back. It's great to have you with us on to the final bell, brought to you by Panther Tyers. And those of you who are watching the visual medium of this would know that Zach Tuohy has joined us. One of the world's great peanuts is the great Reg, because he's proud as punch that he's worked out how to do the virtual background. And those of you who can't see it, he's showing me in full Ronald McDonald regalia going down the slide. Reg, welcome, and you are a tool.
I am not. You've missed me. You have missed me. Howdy. How is everyone? Do you not like it? Honestly.
The positioning's perfect, Reg. It's unbelievable.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Very cold that day.
Yeah.
Where did you find it? How'd you do it?
I don't know. There's some little feature in the top corner here that when I logged in, it asked me if I wanted to add a background. And of course you came to my mind. I think about you virtually nonstop.
In these different times.
You're like a
going down the freeze MND slide there, and my face is certainly expressing the temperature in the room. Reg, what have you been up to? Tell us. What are your boredom breakers at the moment?
Oh, yeah, not much.
Apart from finding pictures of me.
Yeah, not much. I just took this off my Cameron Ling wall that I have at home. Yeah, not much. Trying to figure out how to train has been a bit of a logistical nightmare. Have a little gym set up here. And then it's just training by yourself, which is not good, to be honest, apart from the fact that the quality doesn't tend to be as high. It's a bit mind numbing. And spending time with the kids is not great either. So it's good for a day or two. It's just been weird.
In times like this.
Do you have a running partner? Isn't everyone get one person?
Yeah, I ran with Reece Stanley yesterday.
Oh.
I'd done quite a few times by myself up till then. And even having run for about a week by myself, having one bloke which made such a big difference. It is odd. The only saving grace is that every team and every player has got the same handicap right now. So if the season gets back, I'm not sure it's going to be the greatest standard we've ever seen, but that's a small problem now in the scale of things.
We were talking about players who would excel in isolation and those who'd keep super fit. I thought Joel Corey would be great, Nick. Reece Stanley strikes me as someone who would still be chiseled within an inch of his life, looking magnificent.
Yeah, he's one of those who doesn't get out of shape. It's really frustrating. Could have like a 3-month bender and they'll have like 25 skinnies. So he's a good one to partner up with. Not great for your ego, but he's a bloody good trainer.
Are you good in isolation with your training, or are you more the Steve Johnson mold?
Good in isolation, Lingy. Look what. How do you think?
Well, your creativity's still there.
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I like all the cross training by myself and the gym. That's all fine. You can stick the headphones in, and I do like having people around me when I'm training. Though I find it quite boring training by yourself. And as for the footy skills, they're virtually impossible by yourself. So I'm not too bad. I'm no problem keeping fitness and all that. It's just boring. Like there's a reason I don't do an individual sport. So.
Hey, Reg. I'm going to
Yes.
talk you through maybe decision of not going back home to Ireland. Well,
yeah, it never really occurred to me it was an option, if I'm honest. I know the break is like it's a really long break now, but there's always the risk that you might not get back in the country. And we've no idea when the season is going to start. So, and look, I'm a bit different to the other Irish guys. I think maybe a couple of the young guys have gone home. None of our boys, but I don't know if McKenna or some of the guys from the other clubs, but like I've been here for 10 years and 2 kids and a house, so I'm fairly settled. So the urge to get home isn't as strong for me. But I would genuinely be worried if I left that I wouldn't be able to get back. And football is still, the priority in my job. So I wasn't willing to risk it, to be honest.
On a serious...
Yeah.
Sorry,
Reg.
Go.
Well, what, in all serious, like contact, does the coaches ring you once a week or fitness guy checks in? How's that communication keeping, linked with everyone going?
Well, like this, to be honest, it's a lot of meetings on Zoom and a lot of phone calls and check-ins. So we still kind of have access to all, the people in the club. It's obviously just no hands-on contact. So it does make it a little bit more awkward. But we've had, if we needed physio, we just have to go off to the clinics to get it. If we need to see the doctor, it has to be in the clinical setting. So it's just a little bit more awkward. But for the most part, it's just a matter of picking up the phone. And we're doing, like, we've had these Zoom meetings with all the players, or a good chunk of the players, and done like the Sunday Herald quiz. Hawkey's the quiz master, so we get together, and as you can imagine, the group chat's going a little bit more crazy than it has done in the past. Some of the TikToks getting around. So we still keep in contact. It's just no physical contact, which is a bit frustrating.
You can share a few of those group chats, TikToks with us?
Yeah, I don't know how many I'm not on TikTok. But Cameron Tahini is, if he's posting publicly the ones he's sending into our group, you have to follow him because they're bloody brilliant. But they're stupid. Like, he was Spider-Man last night. He just sent this one where he was just kind of dancing as Spider-Man. And I don't know why it was funny, but it was hilarious. So he's been doing that every day. Gary Rawlings got a few good ones, but nothing ridiculous, just daft.
Can I ask a serious one, and then I'll get back to just stirring you up as much as I possibly can. But AFL players are accused of, but also quite rightly, they're in a bit of a bubble. The footy club is a very protected environment, and we had a hiccup with Blitz, and it was documented in the papers. When do you think the group actually understood how global this was and how massive it was, and the fact that footy was going to be stopped completely? How long did it take for the group to understand the gravity of the situation?
It's hard to say because you're talking, the group is 40 odd players and then however many staff. We knew it was pretty serious pretty quick, but bear in mind with the Blitzy thing, they had just piled us onto a plane and flown us to Sydney for 2 days to play a game like 12 hours before that. So it's maybe a touch harsh on him, but he's apologised and that's fine. But I don't know, the gravity probably hit home quicker for maybe some blokes quicker than others. I certainly could, because Ireland is a few weeks ahead of Australia in terms of the severity of the problem. I've been talking to friends and family back home, and they've unofficially been in lockdown for quite a while now. So I knew it was coming. But it's still, I mean, even now, it's kind of hard to believe just how extreme this problem is. And even just being locked up for a week or two, you do kind of fall back into just life again. It's a different type of life. You're trained. For me, it's training, and I have my garden groomed to within an inch of its life. But you just kind of get used to it again. And it's hard to, I find it hard to think about this like globally. It's to me, it's still just kind of working day to day. But I don't know, if you haven't appreciated the severity of it by now, I don't reckon you're ever going to.
Hey, Reg, maybe talk to us a little bit in the inside of the meeting that we had at the footy club on the Monday, where we pretty much brought in, and then footy staff and players were pretty much sent home. You want to just talk to us about the feel of the players and the coaches and the club and whole, how that went and how it played out? Yeah,
well, it's been on the cards. It had been on the cards for a few weeks, the idea that the season was probably going to stop, and so it shouldn't. It wasn't a shock, but when it happened, it was just, I don't even know how you describe the feeling. It was such a weird feeling leaving the club, because we literally had to come in, empty our lockers, get boots, get runners, grab a footy, and we were more or less told, you're not allowed back here. So I don't even know how I was feeling, if I'm honest, like, because it was so trippy. And it wasn't for after being home for 2 or 3 days that you just kind of sat back and thought, well, this is not normal, and this is unlikely to ever happen again. Hopefully. But yeah, the feeling when Scotty was talking was, like I said, it was maybe that moment where some blokes were understood it a little bit more than others. I reckon a lot of the younger blokes would have just been thinking, what is going on? Like, this doesn't make sense. But I don't know. I still, even thinking back, I'm not sure how I felt leaving. It was just odd. It was just weird. Yeah.
Reg, what was actually playing that game like? It seems like months ago. You know, no crowds. Was it bizarre even playing the game?
Yeah, I was of the opinion that we should play until we can't play. That was my opinion going into round one, but it did feel weird. It didn't feel right. Like, it kind of didn't feel like a real game. And obviously you play as hard as you want, and it was still 4 points on the line, but I have to admit it felt eerie and it didn't quite feel right. But yeah, I don't know. I was talking to a friend of mine, still plays at Carlton, about the Richmond game at an empty MCG. And I was asking him what it was like, and he was talking about how it felt like there was so much room out there. And it felt like you just couldn't tackle. There was so much room. It was easy working out. And the game looked a bit that way. So, I don't know. It's amazing the impact. It's not a surprise, but like, the crowd changes how the game feels and how it's played. And it didn't feel right to me, but that's probably going to be the case when we do get back as well. So.
And Scotty, just to follow on from that, when footy does come back, round two's still the same, isn't it? Zach or Scotty, whoever knows the answer to this one. No. Round two's still the Gold Coast Suns?
Round two's still the same, and then they were going to change everything. Now, initially, I said the first 4 rounds would stay the same. With the timing was going to be different. You might have played, backed up 3 days later. That might change now, but the first 4 rounds, I think, stay, and then it clicks into you play each other once.
And Zach, we were talking a little earlier about the lead-in, if it is after May 31st or if it is a little bit later. What's your feel? How much training do you need, the group need, before you could play a game of footy?
No, I think we'll be fine to play. Like I said, I'm assuming games will be at least as short as round one was. And and everybody across the board is still training. Like, the fitness isn't going to drop off much. It will be, I think it's going to be the skills, because you can still train incredibly hard and keep your fitness, but when you're having two blokes at most training together, it's pretty hard work on all the types of skills you need to work on. So I'm not worried. Well, I suspect we'll get back into the club on a Monday and be playing maybe even be playing by the Wednesday, depending on what the fixture looks like. So it's not going to be a big training lead into it. So I'm not worried about the fitness side of it. I just reckon skills might be a little bit sloppy, but maybe not.
We better let you go in a second, because I know you want to get back to your kids as quick as you possibly can and, and spend some more time with them. That's the vibe I'm getting. Before you go, can you give our listeners, I'm going to ask the guys this a little bit later on too, a couple of recommendations for us. How do we pass the time away? Give us maybe a TV show, maybe a movie, a book. What are you reading at the moment? Give us something.
What am I reading? I bought two books about 3 months ago that I was determined to read. I opened the first one on the flight to Gold Coast and haven't read any more since. So maybe not the bloke to ask about books. I posted on Joel Selwood's Instagram a couple of days ago. He put up a little video, but I've spent this entire time clearing out my 2-car garage, which was still full with boxes from the time we moved in a year ago. And that is now my makeshift gym. So I'm quite proud of that. I don't really have many podcasts or movies to recommend. I'm not a big TV watcher. That's the missus' job. A lot of gardening and painting and that sort of stuff for me. Very boring.
You're pumping up your gardening. What are you growing? What's your pride and joy?
I have just. She's not well. I don't know if she'll hear this now. She asked me to cut back the bushes, right? Because we're growing. So honestly, you won't believe this now. You should see the state. The bushes were growing out kind of over the clothesline and a little bit into the garden, and the grass underneath the bushes was all dying. So it didn't look great, but like the bushes themselves, I thought were lovely. So she said, just cut them back and follow the path there. I said, you can't. Like, it's going to look terrible because they're going to be dead. You're going to see stress root the bushes. I'll send you a picture. You should see the state of my bushes right now. Oh my good Lord Jesus. They're totally see-through. Like they're like there's nothing on them at all. They look dead. And I didn't know this, but Harry Taylor told me the bushes are actually really expensive. I don't know what they are, but apparently they're super expensive. So I have no clue what they are, but they look nice when they bloom. But they were lovely, rounded, nice, thick. Or she made me cut them, and I've cut them, and now it just looks like wasteland.
So, not doing a great job of the gardening, but can you post a photo? Our listeners will tell you exactly what they are and what you need to do.
Yeah, I'll post it on my Instagram, and you can let me know, because it looks terrible.
Excellent work. Stay safe, mate. Thank you very much for joining us. Keep training hard. Maybe we can get some comparison shots of the rigs between you and Reece Stanley when you're training together.
No. I'll take Scotty.
Be on par.
I'll take Gullan on.
Oh man, I'm in peak physical condition here.
You look at it.
I've just woken up. Other than that,
look after yourself, mate. Thank you for joining us. Great to have a chat.
Pleasure, guys. Thanks.
All right.
We'll have a break and we will be back again in just a second. Stokesy, I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the old days, and I do want to get you two to recommend some boredom breakers for our listeners out there, some TV shows and books, etc. Back in a sec. Welcome back. We've had a break there. We've finally got rid of Reg. You're listening to The Final Bell, brought to you by Panther Tyers. I just gave Reg a big serve, wanted him to go and told him to never come back again. How dare he use that sort of humour at my expense?
It's rare for him to do that, Cameron.
It's good to chat with him, and sounds like he's in good spirits and training hard, and the players would all be training very, very hard. Stokesy, did you watch? Now there's no footy on. There's no modern footy. Now all of us old blokes can just carry on like pork chops and say, back in my day, footy was this, footy was that, because we've got nothing to compare it to, so we can say whatever we like. Did you watch the game that Channel 7 played a couple of Friday nights ago? I think it was last Friday night, Geelong St Kilda 2009 round 14 game.
Yep, I did, Cameron. I fast forwarded all the way to where I kicked the goal, but apart from that, I did watch the game.
Everyone says that's the greatest home and away game ever played. I don't like the game because we didn't win. And the last 2 minutes annoys the hell out of me because we should have done so much more to stop that brilliant mark by Michael Gardner, everything, et cetera, et cetera. Poor Harry Taylor got absolutely knocked out in that marking contest. But you know what blew me away, Stokesy? Watching that, 2 quarters, the football that we played, we were flicking the ball around. St Kilda were incredible. Their pressure was enormous. We kept, at one stage, you've dished off a handball over your head. Rookie's picked it up off his bootlaces and has fired this little inside handball to Joel Selwood, who's kicked on his left foot a goal while getting smashed between 2 players. It was phenomenal footy from both teams. Jeez, it was entertaining.
Yeah, that's probably one of the most enjoyable games I've ever played in. Even the build-up was incredible, that game. And I absolutely just loved the atmosphere and being able to come back. I think we're down by 5 goals at quarter time and we got an almighty spray. And, we were able to get back to a certain level. But Michael Gardner, he played a bloody brilliant game that. I don't think he's played it better. Kick 4?
Kick 4? Yeah. It was just
Who were you chasing
big
that
grabs. What's that?
Who were you chasing that game?
Nick Del Santo, I was.
Stitched him up, Cameron.
Oh, no. Well, we'll have to go to the stat sheet there, Scotty, and maybe check out on that. But I was blown away by the speed and the intensity of the whole game. And I think 51,000, was it, Scotty, at the game?
Oh, it was, I luckily covered it. Yeah, it was, I think, near record. And the noise when Gardner took that mark, it was an amazing... Can I ask you, you guys looking at it now, and you know what's changed in modern footy, why can't we play like that now? Is it because coaches go so... Is it the zone that's killed it? Do you know what I mean? Why can't we play like that now?
No, they were playing a form of zone and a very high-intensity press, and their pressure was phenomenal. I think it's just... What I noticed the way we did it, and we'd been doing it for a couple of years, and just the trust that, well, you try something, sometimes semi-ridiculous out of the back line. We just start handballing, inside kick, play on just wildly, and it wouldn't come off. But you just have this trust that, well, someone else is going to come along and help us out and we'll get out of this situation. Every now and then you got caught, but you just wouldn't stop trying it. I think it's maybe it's the instruction from the coaches, I don't know, but
well, coaches don't trust players anymore? Yes.
Well, no, just not the trust. I reckon it's the fear that if you're not quite good enough to do it and you can't sustain it like we could, that the fear is you're going to get scored against so heavily the other way that you're going to get blown apart in games. Whereas we didn't have that fear. Is that the way you saw it, Stokes? It was Bomber encouraged us to play that way. Absolutely.
I think you just, you do what you do best. And there was guys in our team from 15 to 22 who are bloody good players. And I think that's probably the difference I look at now in footy, is with the 2 expansion teams brought in, that's an extra 90 people on the list. I feel that the guys that were from 15 to 22, and I probably was in that state, we were still bloody good players. You look at Joshy Hunt, Shannon Burns, all capable of, playing bloody good footy. To what I look at now, and you see some of the guys who are now playing 150 to 200 games. So I think there's a bit of a difference between that lower end of the talent, so-called lower end of the talent, is a lot. I feel was a lot better back in those days than it is now.
It's funny it's a really good point. Mind you, the way you played that night, there's no way you're in 15 to 22 stakes. You were.
Thank you, Cameron.
Brilliant. I was in a couple of group texts on the last Friday night. A couple of people encouraged me to watch the game. A few of them St Kilda supporters, mates of mine. I think they'd had a couple of beers and were just wanting to let loose on me for a little bit. But one, a more sensible friend, asked who was the most underrated player of that team that was running around in that game. And we were debating back and forth a little bit. Was it Stokesy? Was it Max Rook? Was it these guys who, in the external world, didn't get all the appreciation they should have? And then one bloke just flashed up on the screen right at the right time while I was typing this text, and I deleted everything I'd written. I just wrote Darren Milburn.
Yeah.
he was one of the few players that night who looked like he was still just having a kick of the footy in the park. He had time. He was reading it. He was using it. He went forward for a bit and had an impact. When you got blokes like that who never got a pump up at all, really, externally, you know you got a good team then. When Darren Milburn's the one that everybody else in the big wide world's not talking about.
He was my favourite player, Dasher, playing with him, or one of them. But to be able to watch him run through pre-season, he had no speed, he had a fat ass. To be able to just get to a game and just be in absolute control was incredible. But yeah, he was the most underrated player. 270, 280 games, I think, maybe fifth on the list of Geelong all-time players. For me, he was one of my favourites, and I think he was probably the most underrated player in our area for sure.
Scotty, going back, and this is where Stokes and I can carry on like pork chops. I've been noticing that your newspaper has, over the previous, half a dozen or so days, have been posting a top 20 of the modern era of each club. I read Essendon's with great intrigue. There was some Herald and Lloyd and these sorts of players.
Couple of errors there, but anyway, we'll let that go.
Yep.
Yes.
Hawthorn's was today, and big controversy. Jason Dunstall, not number one, unbelievably, in the Hawks modern
number
era
one?
top 20. Sam Mitchell got number one.
Sam Mitchell, number one.
Dunstall. Mitchell,
Sam?
Dunstall, Crawford, Buddy Franklin.
What?
Luke Hodge.
Luke Hodge at 5.
Luke Hodge at 5. John Platten at 6. Dermott at 7. Langford at 8. Gibson and two-time Norm Smith medalist Gary Ayres at 10.
Well,
when is the Cats one, and who has the responsibility?
Well, Cameron, this is a setup. I like it. It is me, and I'm currently compiling it. It'll be out next Tuesday, I believe. And yeah, when you get down to 17, 18, 19, 20, there's a lot of good players that I'm stressing about big time.
Modern era is
from 1987 when it became the AFL.
1987.
Yeah, so Gary Ablett Senior qualifies. He had a fair few years left. He didn't post that. But there's a lot of players.
1987 to 2019 season.
Correct.
You'd have to have played a big chunk of games. I noticed in the Hawthorn one, Tom Mitchell is at number 20.
Well,
and he's played 47 games.
There. Yeah, well, that's a stretch. But
so he's at number 20. But I would have thought if you haven't played a big chunk of games with the Cats, it would be difficult to squeeze in.
The interesting case study for Geelong is Patrick Dangerfield, who's won 3 BNFs and a Brownlow during his time at Geelong, which is about 95 games. How do you compare that with a Chapman, Johnson, etc., played 280-odd, 3 flags, Norm Smiths? Yeah, it's a difficult exercise, Cameron.
It would be good to it'd be great to compare the top 10 and the best and fairest for those years, though, as well.
Well, that's where our co-host gets a lot of mileage, Stoker. He tells me he's very consistent in being. Is this correct, Stokesy?
Yeah, well, he's very consistent indeed.
No, it's not an easy task. And,
Cameron, who would your number one player be? Give me a top 2.
From 1987
onwards.
Give it to...
Give me your top 5s. You should be able to do 5 off the top of your head.
Well, senior and junior are 1 and 2, and you could debate till the cows come home which order senior and junior are.
Which order's you? I know mine's senior first. What's yours? Stoker, are you senior?
Sorry, hang on. No, time at Geelong, it's got to be senior.
Yeah.
Gary Junior played 7 years at the Gold Coast Suns.
Correct.
And they were magnificent years. If they could have been included in the Geelong debate, well, then I'd give it to Junior. 3, 4, and 5, Stokesy, would have to be Scarlett.
Yes.
Yeah.
3, 4, and 5, Scarlett.
Gary
Enright would be Gary Hocking. I'd have
Jay Selwood's high.
Yeah, I'd have Enright and Selwood ahead of Hocking. Probably Selwood, then Enright.
And
So,
Bartel's in the discussion, I reckon.
And Bartel, I'd have him ahead of Hocking, and then Hocking, probably.
Oh, it's hard,
So
boys, I'm telling you.
No, it's
So
not
that's
hard.
on Tuesday, Scotty.
It's not hard. Your people at Herald Sun have stuffed up 3 out of the ones I've watched already.
They won't. Mine will be foolproof because I'm going to ring you after this, Stokesy, and run it past you. So I think I'm more confident than some of the examples of my colleagues. Let's just say that.
All right, so that's Tuesday. We're going to be recording the podcast on Wednesday.
I'm going to rip this apart.
I know you
I
are.
already know what the first 25 minutes of our podcast next week is going to be, Stokesy. We are going to destroy you, Scotty.
How do you know I'm going to get it wrong?
I think you put a forward in that top 5 too, mind you. I think even Steve Johnson nearly has to get in the top 5.
Oh, Steve's very high compared
Has to be
to
top
others.
5.
What about Tom Hawkins? He's kicked more goals than Steve.
Yeah, it's not all about stats and figures, Cameron. You're obsessed with statistics.
That's what someone like you in your role would say, Scotty.
It's gut feel and what I've seen with my own eyes, Stoker.
Jason Dunstall had to be number 1, didn't he, for the Hawks?
Well, how Sam Mitchell's ahead of Luke Hodge is the first alarming piece of that.
I agree.
1,245 goals Dunstall kicked.
Who did that? Can you tell me the journalist in question, please?
You're going to throw one of your mates under the bus. Gilbert Gardner.
Okay, move on quickly.
Okay. All right. We better go. We've got to finish up. This has been a bit of a longer one. Apologies if we've gone on too long. We're usually going to be around about 45, 50 minutes, but when there's good stuff to chat about and Zach Tuohy to talk to, we'll have guests each week, as I mentioned. Quick one, recommendations for our listeners. Book, podcast, TV show, what do you got?
Tiger King.
Have you watched that?
I love it. Joey Exotic. I love him.
If you
trying to get someone killed, I love him.
If you haven't done Animal Kingdom on Netflix, you should.
Okay. Very good. I've been listening to podcast Confronting O.J. Simpson by Kim Goldman.
Oh.
It's not a
He didn't do
listen.
it, did he, Cameron?
Oh, God, gee, it gets you angry. It gets me so angry listening
Do you reckon he did it? I thought he didn't do it. I thought he was innocent.
Oh, she's incredible, Kim Goldman. It's the sister of Ron Goldman, one of the people he did murder. Yeah, it's not a nice listen, but it's an unbelievable listen. So if you like your podcast, listen to that one. We better go. Thank you, Scotland. Thank you, Stokesy. Thank you to all our listeners, and a huge thank you to Panther Tyers for supporting the podcast. We are going to be back again next week. A current player or coach. Hopefully might even get Chris Scott on next week. Fingers crossed. And also going to get some past players on to have a little bit of a reminisce while there's no new footy happening. We will be back next week.